Okay, so it's a pleasure to be here. So this is a new topic. So I love it how Jackie and we talk about my different areas of research and talk about, well, what would resonate most with we? And what would be most relevant to you in your roles, what you all do? So this one came up as just kind of a off-the-cuff conversation about allyship. And it started with male allyship, and I'll share a little bit of that. But then we started talking about women and women supporting each other. And I said, well, actually, I wrote a Forbes article on this topic. And so that's what led to this presentation today. Okay. So redefining allyship. So it takes a paradigm shift for women to be a true, authentic ally and advocate for other women. Surprisingly, it does, because in the female culture, we are not socialized as much as men are to put our arms around each other and help junior colleagues come on up the ranks. It's a different socialization process. It's a different type of culture. So it does take intentional effort and a mind shift, but the good news is we absolutely can be fantastic allies for one another. So I'll start with the McKinsey quote. So the McKinsey Women in the Workplace Lean In comes out every year in the fall. So 2024 report is not out yet, but it should be out within the next month. So look for that if you like following statistics around women in leadership. Our last speaker spoke to some of those statistics, and Jackie actually spoke to some of those in the beginning as well. But one thing that the last year's report I wanted to highlight for you from the report is we know that there's a lagging process in the middle of the pipeline, and there's a persistent underrepresentation of women, particularly women of color. We know about the broken rung. You've probably heard about it. That's gotten a lot of press over the last year. That's when, at entry level, women are often at parity with men, but when they get to that first manager level, the first step up that rung, that's when they hit a barrier, oftentimes. And so that's when you see those curves diverging that you've heard about this morning. So the broken rung is the biggest barrier to women's advancement, especially for Black women. Women are 2 times as likely as men to experience microaggressions. Microaggressions can be both verbal, but also nonverbal microaggressions. Perhaps it's not looking at someone when they're talking. Maybe it's not acknowledging their ideas or their thoughts. Maybe it's leaving them off an email list or not being invited on the project team. And then finally, what I did want to highlight for you is mentorship and allyship were critical to advance our careers. So I think we all know this intuitively, but it was specifically called out in last year's report. So allyship starts with our emotional intelligence. So for those of you who've heard me before, I weave in emotional intelligence pretty much to all my talks. It was central to my dissertation research, and I've studied the data, but I'm a firm believer that our success in life is not about our IQ. We are all smart enough. You are all smart enough to get a job, to keep a job, and have a successful career. But emotional intelligence has been shown to be a key differentiator between good and great success in work, in life, and in leadership. So that has always fascinated me. So I look at leadership from an emotional intelligence standpoint, and I look at gender from an emotional intelligence standpoint. So here's the formal definition. A set of emotional and social skills that collectively establish how we perceive and express ourselves, develop and maintain our relationships, cope with challenges, even how we manage stress and make decisions is emotional intelligence, and then how we use all that information to guide our thinking and action. So in essence, it's your people skills. It's how well you can get along and connect to other people determines how successful you will be. So how does this play in to allyship? Allyship starts with self-awareness. And it also starts with our situational or our social awareness. That is emotional intelligence. It's a big part of emotional intelligence. So this is the instrument. There are a few common instruments out there, but this one is through Multi-Health System. It's called the EQI 2.0. It's one of the most robust EQ instruments out there. And this one has 5 categories: self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management. And within each of those categories, you have 3 EQ competencies. So for a total of 15. Now, I've color-coded for you in pink and blue, sorry for the stereotype, but the ones that women are stronger in and the ones that we tend to see more in men. So as you can see here, let's look at the blue first of all. So men, self-regard. What's another name for self-regard? Confidence. You just heard your last speaker talk about it for an hour or so. That is confidence. So men tend to score higher in confidence than women do when you look at millions of people who's taken EQ assessments. Assertiveness is another area where men tend to score higher than women. And then the last, stress management, that last category there, stress tolerance, is another area where men tend to score higher than women. But look at all that pink, that interpersonal category. Women tend to score higher than men in all 3 of those areas. Your interpersonal relationship skills, your empathy, and your social responsibility. Empathy is the one EQ skill where women score 3 times higher than men. Now, the ones that are not highlighted are considered gender-neutral skills. And we all have these to varying degrees. Now, caveat, not all men and women fall into gender-specific patterns. I just wanted to mention that. There are plenty of men, perhaps, that lead with empathy or relationships, and there are plenty of women who are naturally confident and assertive. But when you look at millions of people and patterns, this is how it tends to fall out. Okay, keep those in mind because those are going to be woven in and out our discussion today. So 7 levels of male allyship. So I touched on this for the first time, I think it was the summit last year, where I first brought this up. So there are 7, so I've identified 7 levels of male allyship. So this is men who support women. What the data shows is that men are worse allies than they think they are. Unfortunately. Many men think they're better allies than they actually are. But the other piece of data that is, I think, encouraging is most men want to be better allies to women, but they don't know what to do, or nor do they have the support or the skills. That is good news for all of us, and for men as well. So we need to help men be better allies and show them how to do that. So let's go through the levels. So I'll just go through quickly for you. So the first level is level 1, toxic masculinity. This is an extreme or an immature expression of masculinity. Think Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein. There's others out there that may come to mind for you. Again, an extreme or immature expression of masculinity. But masculinity itself is not toxic. I do want to point that out. So these guys are really in a category by themselves, the level 1, and I'm going to focus more on the other levels than level 1. But level 1 is a very base level. By the way, these levels range from complete resistance, which would be that level 1, level 2, to level 7, which is all in. These guys get it. They're full-on advocates and allies. So level 2 is men lose. So these men often are defensive, scared, angry. They see no benefit to any type of parity discussions around gender or race. And again, they're defensive, and they often don't support women or women's organizations. So that's level 2. Level 3, it's all good. These men tend to live in a bubble. They feel no pain in their careers. They may enjoy privilege or certain privileges. And they have a very limited perspective. So again, parity, allyship just doesn't affect them, and they see it as a men lose, or excuse me, it's all good scenario because it doesn't apply to them. Level 4 is not my circus. So these men recognize that there is an issue, but they're not willing to dedicate political capital to be an ally or an advocate for women. They also don't buy into the parity arguments, and their attitude is Not my circus, let the younger generation figure it out. I'm in my career, I'm set, this is someone else's problem. Level 5, the fake feminist. So these men, there's actually a lot of these guys out there, and you may have experienced some of these men in your careers as well. So these men are uncomfortable being uncomfortable. These are the men that generally will come out and advocate for women on, let's say, International Women's Day, but then you don't see any advocacy the rest of the year or any support. So it's really just lip service. It's often to fulfill a personal agenda as well. And then often the support can be passive or aggressive as other behaviors that we could see with that level. Level 6 is ready, set, go. So these men actually want to help. These are the men who want to know what to do, but they just don't know what to do, but they're eager to learn. So these men, we need to provide support and resources. And then finally, you have we win. These are the all-in guys. These are the ones who get it. They're advocates for parity. They're advocates for women, and they see it as a win-win. The focus is more on we. I love the play on words there with we, women electronics. We win, not me. Focus is we, not me. So, okay, that's a brief overview of the levels. Now, let's flip the script, though. Let's think about levels of female allyship. So if we had these for women, where would you fall? You don't have to answer, but just think reflectively. Where do you think you would fall? Are you somewhere in the middle? Are you maybe level 7, all out, advocating for women every chance you get, it demonstrated in your behaviors? Are you kind of a fence sitter? You kind of come out and support other women when it's convenient, perhaps, or based on the situation? So just think about that for yourself, and we'll come back to that. Okay. Do we need to build allyship among women? What do you think? Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't believe that? My intention is not to call anyone out. I'm just curious because I heard a resounding yes. Okay. How about male-dominated industries? Do you think this is even more important? Okay. Absolutely. So keep that in mind. All right, let's get to the Forbes article. So I wrote this article 4 years ago, back in 2020. So I wrote several articles for Forbes. Of all the articles, this one resonated the most with people. This has over 75,000 views. And that tells me that it strikes a chord with people, particularly with women. So why women don't always support other women? There are 5 reasons why women don't always support other women. Okay, before I get into the levels, I do want to quote Madeleine Albright here. How many of you have heard this quote before? Let's see a show of hands. Oh, about half the room. Okay. She made this quote in 2006 at a WNBA awards luncheon, but it caught fire. Thousands of people around the world, celebrities, women, executives have repeated this phrase, literally around the world. And it was from 2006. But why this is important is because this served as a turning point. Our attitudes towards helping each other and supporting each other started changing when she made this quote and when it started getting all the attention it got. It really inspired a global conversation around women supporting other women. Okay, so why don't women sometimes support other women? In the Forbes article, there's 5 basic reasons, or general reasons. One is called the power dead even rule. So this rule, and I'm going to read you this specifically because there's a very specific definition of it. Power dead even, an invisible natural law in the female culture that helps to shape how women interact with other women at work and in their personal lives. The rule governs relationships, power, and self-esteem. For a healthy relationship to be possible between women, the self-esteem and power of one woman must be equal to the other woman in the eyes of both women. So both women must see that power and self-esteem is equal in weight to the other woman. Okay? So it's dead even power. In other words, these elements must be kept dead even. So in female culture, we are raised in a flat culture, and that's why this power dead even rule exists. Again, it's an unspoken natural law. This law does not exist in the male culture because men are raised in hierarchies where there's a clear pecking order. But in the female culture, that culture that we're born into, we're socialized, we hear constantly from movies, books, our parents, our teachers. Everything around us reinforces the idea of a more flat culture for women and a more hierarchical culture for men. So, power dead even rule. Again, in the eyes of each woman, the power and self-esteem needs to be equal. So here's an example. If a male executive comes to a female administrative assistant, and let's see, he has some papers. I'll just show you. And he takes papers and he throws them on her desk and says, I need these by 3. And he walks away. Chances are he's going to get whatever he's asking for from his admin. If a female executive does the same thing, goes to her female admin, drops some papers on her desk and says, I need these by 3, is she going to get those? She might. But what often happens is women have to do more relationship work up front with other women. So she may need to say, I know you're really busy today. I know you got a lot on your plate, but I'd really appreciate if you could get these back to me by 3. So because of the power distribution and the unspoken power in the female culture, women often have to do more relationship work with other women in order to get what they need. Does that make sense? Okay, there's another dynamic to this power dead even rule. What happens, so let's say you have a colleague, a group of colleagues you work with, maybe some of your friends, one of them gets promoted. So what happens is that promotion, that woman has subconsciously violated the power dead even rule. So what happens is when one woman rises above another woman, other women may act to cut her or bring her back down because she has violated the power dead even rule. Now, some of the ways that other women may do this, maybe talking behind her back, maybe belittling her, maybe just making offhanded comments about her accomplishments. But these are little subtle things that occurs between women. Again, this does not occur in the male culture, but it occurs because of the power distribution in the female culture. It's a fascinating dynamic. Most people are completely unaware of it in the workplace, but it's a very powerful dynamic that often plays out every single day. How many of you have seen a dynamic like this in your jobs? Okay, wow, look at that. Okay, so you've experienced it, but you just perhaps didn't have a name for it. But it's the power dead even rule. So it is a big reason. It's not the only reason, but it's a big reason why women sometimes do not support other women. Another reason, male-specific emotional intelligence skills as women rise to higher levels. So we talked about the male versus female EQ skills. If you're working in a male-dominated environment, oftentimes women, in order to succeed even, to fit in, women sometimes will display more male traits. So maybe you're purposely being more assertive at work. You're making a point to speak up more in meetings. You're trying to come across as confident, more confident than you normally are, let's say. But it's when women take on traits that are more masculine in order to fit in. So historically, this has been the case for women because women are in smaller numbers in leadership roles. In nearly every organization across the world, there's still a tremendous leadership gender gap. So in order to fit in and succeed, women have had to do this. Now, it's called the queen bee syndrome. You may have heard that term's been around for 20 years, but that's the name of it when women take on more traits that tend to be more masculine. Another thing women sometimes do in order to fit in, especially in male-dominated environments, is they suppress their female traits. Let's say you are high in empathy. Let's say you're a naturally empathetic person or leader or manager. or even contributor. You may be suppressing those traits as you climb the ladder. And again, we do this to fit in. Or maybe you're not leveraging your great relationship skills as much. Or maybe you're socially conscious, but you don't talk about it as much at work because, again, you're in an environment that's male-dominated. So that is another reason. The queen bee syndrome and more male-specific EQ traits is what we have historically seen, and it's a reason women don't support other women. I have to say, well, actually, I'll wait to the table discussion before I comment. I want to hear your thoughts on that. The third reason is few spots in favored in-groups. Oftentimes in leadership roles, there are in-groups. And there's going to be times in your career where you're part of an in-group, or you may be part of an out-group. But oftentimes, if you're trying to get to a leadership role, those are few and far between. And so competition for spots makes us less inclined to help others and support other women. The fourth reason, hard-fought obstacles. In our careers as women, we come up against multiple barriers, whether it's gender bias, it's lack of role models, lack of mentors, maybe lack of allies. Perhaps it's your caregiving. Perhaps you're having to juggle caregiving with your elders or your children at home, plus manage your career full-time. So women are used to coming up against barriers their entire careers and fighting obstacles. But when you get to a position where you feel that you have made it, oftentimes the attitude towards junior women is, I have figured this out, you should too. How many of you have heard that? Or kind of sensed that, perhaps? So that is an attitude. It's not as common nowadays, but it is historically very common to have that mindset towards younger colleagues is, I figured it out, you should too. And so what happens is executive women often don't take the time to mentor junior colleagues. Often they have less resources, or they have, may have more caregiving responsibilities. So they don't take the time to reach out and be allies for other women. And then the fifth reason is patriarchal cultures socialized to believe women are less valuable. Now, I know that's a strong statement, but here's a little context. Most of us work in male cultures, whether you're in a male-dominated industry or not. Vast majority of our cultures are male. Men have historically been in the workplace longer, and the work cultures are designed to suit men's style of working and living. So, because of that, power, privilege, and status are highly valued skills in these cultures. So, women are socialized, or we're socialized to believe or view women as less valuable because of these qualities that are valued, power, status, and privilege. So men often prioritize, for example, in these cultures, networking opportunities, or maybe leadership development opportunities versus building competency. So that is another reason why we often don't support each other. So basically, the bottom line is it's multifactorial. There's not one reason why, and I realize this is the more I studied it and thought about it, is there's multiple reasons. But things are changing, and so that's what I want to explore now. So here's a few suggestions for you. Look for opportunities to celebrate women's accomplishments. You can do that through a simple introduction, even. You could say, I want you to meet my colleague Maria. Maria's increased this project by $500,000 in the last 6 months. How long did that take? 10 seconds. And I've weaved in her accomplishments into that introduction. So there's all kinds of little things you can do to support and lift up other women. Point out when women are being blamed unfairly for mistakes, and don't be afraid to call out microaggressions. Promote growth mindset and zero-sum thinking, and be allies to both men and women. Okay, so I'm going to breeze through the superpowers because I touched on this last year. I also did a webinar on the topics, but I want you to think about how you could use your 7 superpowers that are innate in women. Men also have superpowers themselves, but these skills are specific to women based on how our brains are wired and how we're socialized and our emotional intelligence. So transformational leadership, communication skills, empathy, your interpersonal relationships, divergent problem solving, intuition, and grit. So I'm going to just skip through these just in the sake of time. These were great slides, but sorry, we don't have time. But the 7 superpowers, I want to get to how we can use these superpowers to be better allies for each other. So some examples here. So transformational leadership is a leadership style that is based on collective problem solving and decision making. It also focuses on ethics, emotions, and long-term goals. That style has been linked to women's style of leadership. So how could you leverage being a transformational leader? I mean, how can you leverage your natural transformational leadership skills to be a better ally for women? Here are a few suggestions. Allow women to take risks, or your colleagues, to take risks and make mistakes without ridicule or embarrassment. Second thing you can do is show confidence and trust by providing new opportunities or challenges. And you might want to write these down. I don't have a slide showing all this. So first is allow them to make mistakes without embarrassment. Second is to show confidence or trust in them by providing them opportunities. And then the third is provide specific positive feedback and mentoring. So those are 3 ways you can use your transformational leadership skills to be a better ally for women. Number 2, communication skills. So how could we use this? When women listen with the intent to learn because we focus on relationships. Women pick up both verbal but nonverbal cues as well. So a few things you can do is listen, make sure you're listening with the intent to learn about the other person, not just waiting to speak, but truly learn about them and their needs. Focus on the relationship and pay attention to those nonverbal cues that you're picking up, because women are very adept at picking up those nonverbals. Your empathy superpower, how could you use this? It's critical in understanding what other women are going through and their needs, and also finding common ground and support in others. So we can help others cope with challenges, crises, or change by leveraging our empathy or improving your empathy. Empathy is a skill, by the way. So if you're not naturally empathetic, it absolutely can be worked on. And listening skills is one way that you could improve your empathy. Okay, 4th, your interpersonal relationship superpower. How could you use this to be a better ally? Use it to connect with and help others, work through conflict, build deeper relationships with your team, your leaders, and even your customers or clients that you work with. And it can help you address conflict and change as well. The 5th superpower is your problem-solving skills. So when women solve problems, we tend to be like a radar screen. We pick up clues from the environment. So we consider the impact on ourselves, our colleagues, the company, even our customers. So women think of multiple factors, and then we make a decision. So that's called divergent problem solving. So how could you leverage this to be a better ally? Help other women carefully consider multiple factors when making decisions, such as the impact on team, etc. So women are perfectly capable of making their own decisions. This is something I often tell men about, because men often want to fix a problem. You're perfectly capable of making your own decision. So we just need to facilitate the process so women are allowed to explore different factors so they can come to that decision that's right for them or the company. Does that make sense? All right, that's problem solving. Superpower number 6 is intuition. Women pick up on nonverbal cues, what's not being said, and can sense tension between people. So this is a key skill for women. And we often think that others see what we see. And that's not always the case. Women often see things that others don't. So listen to that little voice. Don't discount what you're seeing, and don't assume others are seeing what you are seeing. So that's how you could support other women to do that, to be an ally. And then the 7th superpower is grit. There's been a lot talked about grit in the last several years. Has anyone read Angela Duckworth's book? Okay, you know all about it in her TED Talk, all about grit. So grit is, we know that people with stamina and perseverance are more likely to accomplish goals. We know this from people who are gritty. But despite the barriers or resistance, you can help other women to keep going and carry on and be gritty. So you can help other women be gritty by helping them with their stamina and their perseverance and just encouragement to keep going. Okay, and women are the engine of the world because of our grit. So it's a great superpower. Okay, finally, just to wrap up here, going back to the 7 levels of allyship, I'll just bring all these up here. There really isn't a defined term for toxic femininity, but just think about these levels and where you may fit as ally. And what are some things you can do? So walking away from this conference, what are some things you can do to be a better ally to other women? So whatever level you may be at, for example, if you're at it's all good, what can you do to support women to move up to a level 4 maybe? Or if you're maybe at a level 5, how can you get to a level 6? And it's some of the things we heard today. All right, we know that a rising tide lifts all boats. That's particularly important in a male-dominated industry, such as electronics. And then finally, I just want to leave you with this. It's one of the best quotes out there Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, fabulous, talented? Actually, who are you not to be? So if more women empowered, if we took ownership and pride in our achievements and in our superpowers, it would empower and liberate so many other women.